My name is Marcell Hanson, and you're listening to Small Habits, Big Changes. Let's dive in. Welcome, welcome. As promised, we have a very special guest in the house today. On the podcast is Lizzie Brown. She's the co-founder and CEO of Yoga Wake Up, an interactive and meditative app that you can download for free. Today's episode, we're going to go deep into why and how the app was developed and how you can benefit from just as little as 30 seconds to several minutes each and every night and morning, helping you get your day started fresh and centered, focused. Here's Lizzie. Welcome. Today we have a special guest. Lizzie Brown is in the house. Let's hear a little bit for those of the listeners that they're not familiar with your background. Give us a little Cliff Note version of how your previous life professionally, how you transitioned into what you're doing today.
Okay, wow. I've been working on Yoga Wake Up since 2015 was when we actually officially launched the app. So my previous life it's been a long time. But prior to Yoga Wake Up, my background was in PR and marketing. And I studied PR in college. I always knew that I wanted to have some kind of profession where I was meeting people and getting to know people. Relationships is kind of my A game. And I moved from Gainesville, Florida to Los Angeles when I was 21 years old, just days after graduating. And I've been there since. And I most recently got my executive MBA at UCLA Anderson. So I just graduated in June. I'm coming off the heels of a very rigorous education and getting ready to put all of that into my business.
Tell us, for those who aren't familiar with the app, aren't familiar with what you've developed.
Well, I can tell you how the idea came about. We started Yoga Wake Up because actually my husband, he's an app developer. I can tell you now, I never really expected that I would go from PR to working on an app. But having met him and realized that I could do PR for anything, and I was already working in the fitness business, he and I decided to work on an app together. And Yoga Wake Up came about in a yoga class that kind of interestingly started in Shavasana. Most of the time, that resting pose, is reserved for the end of class. But in this case, the teacher had the students lying down in Shavasana, and she asked them to kind of pretend like they were coming out of their sleep and wiggle their fingers and toes. And then she announced, "Good morning." And it was such a aha moment that why don't we all wake up like this? Mm-hmm. And I actually had been somebody who snoozed my alarm 2 to 3 times every day. And my husband came home from that class and said, maybe we could do this instead. Maybe this would solve your snoozing issue. And so we tested it. We went to the teacher. She recorded the very first wake up for us. And that's how we really got started. That's how it took off as a solution to your snooze.
Fantastic. I love it. I'm not a snoozer, but when I delved into the app, I was like, okay, for me, initially, I was like, this might not work because I don't keep a phone in my room. I don't Bluetooth into the speaker in my room, but I could do it for like naps, but I wake up just naturally to I don't know.
That's nice.
The cat pouncing on me. I don't know. But what I did was I listened to it long enough to day after day to where I like the initial woman's voice. It was very relaxing. I don't know if it's yours or if it was hers, but yeah. So I was like, now I just think it in my head. Like when I'm laying in bed, when I first wake up, I do the little bit of, wiggle and check in with the body. So it doesn't have to you could really utilize the app if you are a snoozer. I've never, ever been a snoozer. I'm out of bed within a minute. So for me, I had to train myself through listening to the app a little bit to stay in bed for 120 seconds. That's a stretch for me because usually I'm as soon as I wake up, I'm 10 seconds and I'm out of bed.
Yeah.
So for me, it was this is a little unlearning, right? Because getting out of bed as soon as you wake up, there's lots and lots of scientific evidence that shows that actually is a great way to start your day. It's a way to mind over matter, to tell yourself when I say to do something, I'm doing it. But for me, I almost take that to such a discipline level that I barely even stretch in bed. So I was like, this is cool. So I was listening to it and I was like, okay, I like this little extra 30 seconds. This is a little
That's
extra 60
great.
seconds. So how long did it take you, if you were a chronic snoozer before the two of you developed this, like how long did it take you to really embrace this? It's a new ritual. It's a new habit in the morning.
Yeah.
How long did it take you?
Any habit, of course, and there's such varies, right? How long it actually takes to start a habit. I mean, we've heard 21 days, we've heard 66 days. It's probably different for everyone. In this particular case, it does feel pretty instant in the sense that once you wake up to this, like once you hear that audio, if you listen and you act it out and you start stretching, and I love what you're doing because you're doing it without the teacher's instruction. Not everybody can do that. You know, most of us need kind of to be coaxed out of bed. It's not this easy thing that we can just do on our own. So it's nice to have this voice that says, take a deep breath, perhaps like thinking about something you're grateful for in the morning. And once you're up, because you would love the audio content that's actually designed to like get you up and moving, because the content that's from bed is 2 to 1 more popular. And that just goes to show you what people are into. But the get up stuff is great for busybodies, or if you have something you need to, accomplish that morning and you know that you need to get moving quickly, that's where you can get up and stand up and do some stretches, standing by your bed. We also have content for people with who are napping. So to your point, if you even just need to take like an afternoon break, get your mind right, move something through your body, there's something for that kind of feeling too.
Right. Now, how many years has the app been running?
We launched Yoga Wake Up in 2015 as a side hustle. And in 2018, I started working on it full time.
Okay. And your husband helped develop it, but does he currently work on it as well? Or is he just on the development side? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so for people who, not too many spoilers, but for people who are already in the app or are curious about the app, what do you roll out like additionally? What are some of the newer things that you've added to the app? I mean, 2018 or 6 years ago. So a lot's changed since you started. What's that progression really look like, and what can we look forward to if we're already on the app?
Absolutely. So one of the most important things that I suppose is a surprise, given that it's called Yoga Wake Up, is that we have a pretty extensive library of content for falling asleep and for bedtime, because it really does, that routine really does begin at night. And we definitely want to encourage people not to just use it in the morning, but to wind down with either meditation or yoga or some kind of journaling exercise. And all of that is something that you can find in the app. We are also really excited about this most recent innovation on iOS, which is using the iOS automations. And that's a way for it to be even more habit forming and easy. It's a seamless experience where, just like you would with the iOS alarm, the one that's installed on the phone, you can set an automation and your yoga wake up alarm can go off at the exact date, time that you set it whenever you need. So that's a really helpful innovation that, we hadn't been able to utilize because it didn't exist yet. And so it's pretty exciting that now iOS has this automations feature that we can use.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then the other thing I want to add, because timing wise, it's relevant, but also it's always relevant. We have Spanish language content, and we've translated the app entirely to Spanish. So we recorded teachers last summer in Spain and recorded teachers from Venezuela, Cuba, Mexico, and we'll continue to be doing that.
Not that I am surprised by that, but there are lots of people that choose just to go the English route. What was the impetus do you speak Spanish? Does your husband speak Spanish?
Right. My heritage is Cuban. My mom is Cuban. My husband Joaquin's mom is from Mexico. And we both think it's important to have a global offering, but we want to be able to reach all of the people who don't speak English that could still benefit from using this app.
Absolutely. I think I haven't lived in the States. I live in Canada currently. I haven't lived in the States in like 20 years. But when I was there, Spanish was like the second most used language in the country.
And I live in Los Angeles, where Spanish is completely interchangeable with English.
Yeah, I came from San Diego before so it was like everything is Spanish. And then I lived briefly in Florida for a year, and I was a minority there I speak broken Spanglish, but everyone speaks, I mean, with the Haitians, the Colombians, the Cubans, like everybody, Spanish is everywhere, and it's a beautiful language. And it definitely, I would think it at least doubles the reach in the United States, and then worldwide, it's massive. Do you have any stat of like English to Spanish, like who's it's reaching?
I have it written down, so I can't give it to you here. It's in our press release.
It's pretty exciting. There's a couple smaller media companies on YouTube that translate into Spanish and other languages. And so I really like the idea. It seems, why limit it to English if you can expand, just to widen that reach, because it is huge, of course.
And it's really important too, because our app is audio only. That's the only way that you can experience it, is if you know the language.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is probably, a good segue to say that one of the other many benefits, because I know you mentioned earlier that you don't keep your phone in your bedroom. One of the other many benefits is that it's very much hands off. So we have designed the app in a way, and especially if you take advantage of Siri features, you don't really need to handle the phone or look at it. So it can be helpful for anyone who's trying to kind of develop a healthier relationship with their phone, or maybe be more screen free, or if you have any kind of challenges looking at a screen, like if you're experiencing migraines or for whatever reason you don't want to be looking at the screen, it can be a helpful tool for those needs as well.
For sure. I was going to say, I didn't want to poo-poo it because I haven't slept with my phone in my room for years, and I never ever would, but I do have a Bluetooth speaker that I can easily plummet through that goes to a sunrise clock, right? So a lot of the clocks that are out, if you want to keep the Wi-Fi signal, I guess you're still getting some of the Bluetooth, but mine's pretty far away across the room, but I could easily pump it through that speaker, and it could wake up with the sunrise even.
You could, and that would be a dream. I have a sunrise alarm clock too, and I like to do our audio with the sunrise clock. It feels like I'm getting a spa experience.
It is. It's like just to have the warmth, kind of, especially in the winter. I mean, in LA, you don't see the gloom as much as maybe the Pacific Northwest, but on those darker days, and I have blackouts on, right? So my blackouts are pulled, like to have like a light come up in the winter is the only time I use it. I don't use it in the summer typically, but it is a spot. You have this beautiful soft voice, like coaxing you into like checking in with your body and relaxing and taking a breath and starting your day really, like it is spa like. That's good that you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's like the simple treasures, right? Like, and there's not that many kind of like easy things you can add into your day just for, just a little mindfulness, a little treat, something you can do right when you wake up, your first 5 minutes.
Yeah, I actually thought the other day I utilized it after a workout too. Kind of, it's funny that you mentioned the Shavasana, because I always think of that at the end of the yoga routine. Like when I'm starting, I literally fall asleep usually by then. I'm like, but when exactly, it works. It's like, get back into your body, you're asleep. But at the end of a workout, if I'm laying down and like resting, the other day, I thought I could pop this on, and it's kind of the same thing. It's like you're just checking back in. You could use it anytime. It doesn't have to be when you wake up, or it couldn't only be isolated to waking up or going to sleep, but you could use it after a nap or after a stressful time, or you just like laying down to kind of recalibrate. It's multi-purpose. But I want to go back to you talking about starting your morning routine. Essentially, you alluded to the night before, which I think most people in this movement towards wellness and betterment have an idea of that. But why, in your experience, do you see that the day really starts the night before, and how has that impacted your life, integrating these sort of meditations both in the PM and in the AM?
For so many reasons. I mean, one of the more obvious reasons is if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not going to bed at a consistent time and waking up at a consistent time and having that, like, hopefully, between 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night, it's going to be so much harder to wake up in the morning. And like, I can't solve that. Like, we can make you feel better. We can, help you feel better in your body and help you set an intention for the day. But if you're exhausted, you're going to be groggy when you wake up, or you're going to have that like urge to snooze your alarm because you're just simply tired. So in that regard, we really wanted to kind of create a movement around using the app at bedtime and then waking up with it, and really thinking about sleep on a 24-hour cycle, not just something that you do at night, but something that you are, thinking about like healthy choices throughout the day. And that very much ties in with how you wind down at bedtime. And a lot of things that, maybe your listeners probably already know, but I can reiterate because they're so important. But like not having that looking at a screen right before bedtime, and not watching TV right before bed, and doing whatever kind of winding down self-care practices that we do so that you can kind of ready yourself for bedtime.
Yeah, the dark room, the cool room, airing out the room, not having an argument or something, like even a hot shower, a hot bath right before bed. While it feels good for a minute, it can disrupt really the temperature gauging that's going on. So maybe an hour before going to bed, not eating a big meal, relatively close to dinner. I like to have 4, 5, 6 hours if I can, and I sleep so much better. But I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of clients over the years are like, eating dinner on the West Coast, we're pretty good. You go to New York and the East Coast, they're eating dinner at 10 o'clock at night. And you're like, It's my bedtime. But here, I think in California, quite often you'll see people out to dinner at 7:30 reservation, 8 o'clock. That's when they're starting to eat. So you take an hour and a half to eat. You're not finishing till 9:30, and then you may not go to bed till 11, but it's very late in the day to be eating.
And if you're drinking wine with that meal, forget it.
Now, I'm curious, because I'm like a real biometric nut, do you track any statistically, like personally yourself, maybe not your app users, but do you wear a biometric, or have you tested any of your sleep before and after the app, or any of that you can share?
Yeah, good question. So as far as inside the app, there's not necessarily like the technical tracking inside the app, although we do track, some of the metrics that are just helpful for your own interest. So how many minutes used and days of the week. And people love having a streak. And I know that it's really helpful for keeping you going. So of course there's
Gold
a
star
streak built in there. Yes, did it every day.
Yeah.
And that's really helpful as well. And everything does submit to HealthKit if you're on iPhone, and similarly on Android. So in that regard, if you have a wearable, I think it's really nice to be able to kind of look at how your experience is overlapping your experience of yoga wake up with your wearable. For me, I have worn an Oura ring. Unfortunately, I let my husband borrow it, and he wore it on his pinky and he lost it. So that happened. He's like, this is a cool ring.
Uh-huh.
So I don't have an Oura ring anymore. But in the time that I had it, it was really nice to see and be able to reflect on my sleeping habits. I'll tell you what, though, it's very confronting, right? It tells you, oh yeah, you're not doing so good. Better.
Yeah.
You need to do better.
You got lots of room for improvement here. I will say it's a good point. You don't have to actually have it integrated into the app, but if you were wearing an Oura ring and you have the statistics, or a Whoop, or an 8 Sleep, or, even a Garmin or a Fitbit, I don't know what those guys do, but you know what it's like. And then you start something new, and that's the only thing you start. This is also why I try and tell people, like gradients, like start one new thing at a time. And then you can actually look and see, if I started on, August 16th and I used the yoga wake up app for 1 month, you can easily just compare the data and look back and go like, well, the months were they roughly the same? They were both summer months, and that I was under the same amount of stress. Wow, look, my sleep improved, 10%, 15%. And what people don't realize, it does usually, that first month usually has a pretty good punch of an impact. But over time, using the app, I would assume, like similar other wellness apps, that it incrementally continues to increase, and you get better and better and more. I always find the freedom is in the structure. So if you are structured and you're using it every night, you're falling asleep faster than you were. You're not ruminating on the day's thoughts. Like it almost gives you a soundtrack to listen to, instead of your own, like, oh, I should have done that one. I need to do that in the email, and I should have written that down. And tomorrow morning, first thing, and you forget all those things, of course, by the time the morning comes. But you get to listen to like this calm, soothing, reassuring voice, and then you're asleep. You're sleeping better. It's interesting to see. For me, I must be a numbers girl. I didn't know this about myself till I started tracking so much, but it's fascinating to see, like, I do just keep getting better, and things get easier.
And I really love what you said about freedom is in the structure. I'm going to use that. It's so true.
I mean, and this is a perfect structure where people might be naysaying structure, but utilizing an app for 5 minutes in the evening and 5 minutes in the morning to like better your sleep, better your peace of mind, help you get up in a better state of mind, like that doesn't feel too hardcore structured to me, but it is a structured tool. It is something that is helping you to, recalibrate, to alter your state into a calmer place, right?
Yeah, it's the routine. We like routines. We do really well with routines.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, for morning and bedtime, you think about these are things that if you do have some structure, it's something you do every day. And it makes such a difference. It sets the tone for the rest of the day. And falling asleep sets the tone for, or how you wind down sets the tone for that night of rest. There are many benefits in putting up, some gentle guardrails that give you enough of a routine so that when you look back on it 6 months later and you go, wow, I have this consistency, and you can point to that as to why you're sleeping better or why you're, not experiencing road rage.
Why your blood pressure came down. When you said that, I just got a visual of, you're saying guardrails. I thought of, when you go bowling and when you're really bad and you just constantly gutter, it's so deflating. They put up the bumpers, those little bumpers in the gutter, and you kind of like, it eases the blow of like that you're constantly slamming the ball into the gutters. But eventually you kind of like over time get better and keep it more in the middle of the lane. And then the bumpers can come off. I think of that like the same thing as like you're having a guardrail that's just guiding you to stay in the lane of wellness. I mean, you might zigzag around, bonk into the sides a little bit, but over time it is going to give you like the groove in the road, like ability to lay tracks, right? I've heard it said, I don't know who said that, but when they said it about laying train tracks, the train's not coming. You got lots of time. You have to like lay these tracks, because if the tracks aren't there, the train cannot run, right? So these guardrails keep you kind of in the zone of wellness. There's still lots of other things you can do. Like you've already mentioned, winding down and getting into a calmer state even before turning on the app, and before going to sleep. But it really is a reminder of lots of times we say on this podcast anyway, that it is about gradients and just like giving yourself some grace and trying something for a committed amount of time, because sometimes it doesn't work the first night. Usually it does. I mean, it worked with me. I turned it on. But sometimes people resist change, whether it's good change or bad change or, hardship and change.
Well, and all those thoughts going on in our head, they can be really loud.
It is sort of a meditative. I'm curious, do you I haven't delved completely into the app. I've utilized it for a little bit and I was like, oh, I want to talk to her more about this. Do you feel like there's a similarity to meditating with these like voice-led meditations, would you say?
Absolutely. I come from the thought that yoga really is like a form of meditation. It's almost like an entry point to deeper meditation, because you are able to focus on each pose, and that might be 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 25 seconds. That's just moving into being like a meditative mindset. I have used our audio guided meditation for years, and in March, I attended a Vipassana. It's a meditation course, a 10-day meditation course, in which you also observe noble silence. And you don't meditate with music or anyone guiding you. And that was an adjustment. Now that I've been trained to meditate without someone guiding me, I still do guided meditation almost as just as entertained, if that makes sense. Like I enjoy it. It's nice. But I feel like I've kind of been able to now practice meditation without having the guide. And it just kind of goes to show that like we're starting out with guided meditation. And then if you are able to do guided meditation and learn to quiet your mind, then you may decide that silent meditation is another way of getting there without having to have the guide.
I'm always in awe of the universe and how serendipitous things are. 2 weeks ago, we had a guest on K2 that also spoke of a different type of meditation, transcendental meditation, and the powers that lie within just quieting your mind. You're not trying to shut it off. You're just trying to be in agreement with it and have some sense of like being able to quiet it. You don't always have to quiet it, but if you can't quiet it, there will be times where you don't have freedom and you are out of control because your mind will, start rattling on. So just curious, as an aside, how long did you go in noble silence?
The course is 10 days. And on the 10th day, or I guess it's the 11th day, you get to talk.
Yeah. So it's a full 10 days, right? Yeah, I know a couple people that have gone on that, and I'm like, I've done lots of like, I used to do a silent Sunday every week. No electronics, no music. Music is really hard for me not to play music because they can just get transported a little in music. I got away from it because I tend to work 7 days a week. But I know it's on my list for this September to kick back up because it really is. It's a quiet day anyway. I live kind of in a sleepy town. So Sunday's not a lot going on.
Yeah.
It's funny how quickly it gets spoiled if you're not used to it. Like I start up in the morning, then all of a sudden I'm talking to the cat. I'm like, oh no. And so
I
then
did
you do it again, start over.
I did struggle a bit because I talked to myself a lot, and my husband was like, "Are you going to be able to not talk to yourself?" I was like, "Wait, is that not allowed either?"
It's actually not using your voice at all, not being like vocal, right? So I guess you could talk
Right.
in your head, but you're defeating a little bit of the purpose of the silence.
Exactly.
Eventually it will quiet because I'm a in my head talker as well. And sometimes an out loud talker to myself. But I think that's like the bumpers on the lane as well. And over the day, the first day is probably really tough. Like you just constantly are catching yourself like, oh, oh, and then second day a little less, and the third day, fourth day, as you wake up, you're like, okay, yeah, I got this. I can do this. I have, I can watch clouds pass by and not have to share my observation with someone else. Yeah, it's really powerful. I think that there is, back to the synchronicity of the universe of just how you and K2 kind of lined up, is like, speaking of this, is there's a lot of evidence of various kinds of meditation being so very helpful, just because I think more and more so, not that it hasn't been popular for thousands of years, but because of the noise that exists in today. And social media certainly adds a ton to that. You're constantly bombarded with messages of someone else or ads or retargeted ads, or now the phone listens to you and tells you all different kinds of ads that you supposedly want, billboards and all that.
Like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. There has to be, I think we look to have some bit of homeostasis, like to get back to a place of equilibrium, right? So we need quiet. Yeah.
We do, and we need boredom. Like we need time to reflect and not do anything, to be able to sit. It can be very uncomfortable. It can make you feel very anxious to just sit and do nothing. And that is something that we've really gotten away from, haven't we? I mean, we're just so busy.
Yeah, I think so. It reminds me of more the masculine, feminine energy, and that the masculine is really good at nothingness. That is the goal of masculine bliss, while the feminine bliss is more about creation. I mean, from the mother comes, everything, Mother Earth and babies and all that good stuff. But without that polarity, there wouldn't be like a balance and even an attraction, for that matter, between the masculine and the feminine. And so I've always looked at meditation as something that the masculine embraces so much easier, because that is their place of bliss. Like that's the masculine part of me, like, loves that. Yes, I like to be productive, but also, in order to be really productive, also have to have that brain numbing silence of nothingness. Well, I think the feminine does struggle because that energy is a creating energy. And so creating silence and creating nothingness is an interesting paradox.
Absolutely.
It's still a creation. And I think if the feminine could wrap the mind around that, then it would be easier for everyone, like across the board. I got you thinking, you're nodding.
You did. Well, because I've recognized, because having done the Vipassana and coming back with such insight, I now recognize the incredible value of having quiet time. And I was actually just talking to a friend of mine who has her own business, and she moved to the desert. And she said, wow, she said, just by moving somewhere very quiet, I've actually found much more productivity. And so it's a different kind of productivity. You take action and then you take rest. And in that, and not that meditation is always restful, but it is giving your mind a break and creating space for more, for something new, for, like you said, to create.
Yeah.
And I can be so much more creative when I take that time. And so it's not easy. It's a lesson, because it's so much easier to just like wake up and get straight to work or go right into that project. But now that I recognize the real value, because I've seen it firsthand in myself, because people can tell you all the time, like, oh, you should try this.
Yeah.
But until you try it and see the value yourself,
Yeah.
Now that I do, I'm like, oh, this 30 minutes isn't me,
It's not a waste of time. No.
It's not a waste.
It's
for the
expanding time.
benefit of everything else.
I think that is a real mind shift that somehow I was able to make, like in the early 90s. I just somehow the light bulb came on and I caught it. So I feel really fortunate. But I do see a lot of people struggle, even in their 40s and 50s, when kind of you feel like, okay, you might have got a hang of it by now, but they've just been working for 30 years and I'm like, for what exactly? Like, meditation, I think that stillness, that nothingness is about like reflection, but also it is about creating a space for more. I use this, it's a transferable sort of concept that I apply to my clothes. So if I want to buy a new piece of clothing, I have to get rid of 1 or 2 pieces of clothing because I'm not getting a bigger closet. I'm not gonna, I need a bigger dresser. No, I don't even wear 96% of the clothes that I have now. Honest to goodness, I have 4 outfits that I rotate through, and that's about it. I don't know why. I just like that's the way it is.
Wear what we like.
Whatever's comfortable and softest, and you're like, oh, this is soft. I'm going to wear it right out. But I'm not going to go and try and stuff a new, 5 shirts or a couple pairs of trousers into a spot that already is full. Like, it's the same. Why don't we think that with our brain?
Right.
Like, why would I try and I need to take on more tasks? You haven't created any space and any, it's almost like I always come back to farming too, of rotating your fields for crop, but also when you plant a seed, you don't come out the next morning and be like, where is it? Where's the harvest? I think of that a lot, is farmers really have this innate understanding that what I do today will feed my family 9 months from now, or 1 year from now, or 4 years from now, because we're rotating. And I think that takes a lot of consciousness and awareness to have that. And so there is quiet time, and being in nature is a great neutralizer, I think, too. And I'm probably fall victim to not getting out as much as I could. I'm outside a ton, but I'm not out in a quiet space a lot. But for me, and for lots of other people, I think might be in the same boat, listening to this, back to the app, listening to this calming voice, it's almost like a bubbling brook. It's like there is something, it's like a white noise, but not. It's just a calming sort of soundtrack to your wellness journey, right? So it's just moving you along, guiding you down this lane, or putting up the guardrails, up the bumpers, whatever it is that kind of just, you don't need to think, just follow these words, take a breath in and out. It's like we forget to breathe. Right? We forget to do the simple things.
And because we're all on different paths, and we are all kind of at different places in that journey of getting there, where you've described understanding that we need that space, you might listen to something. Some of the audio content is really more of a pep talk, and that's okay too, because it may have 10 seconds of silent meditation, and the rest is leading you up to just being comfortable enough to pause for 10 seconds, because that is still an accomplishment if you're new to meditation, or if you're new to quieting your mind, or being able to, work your way up to a longer practice. So I think of it as a really solid entry point. And like I said, it can be, there's so many different practices on the app that you can choose from, and the descriptions are written by the teachers. So some of them are more descriptive than others. And the titles may suggest, this one is for building inner confidence, or this one is simply a pranayama practice, like a breathwork practice. And so there is that variety, because for a lot of people who are using the app, and maybe some of your listeners, this is brand new. The exposure is brand new.
I like what you said. It is a great place to start if you're just looking to implement the one thing. I'm always just take action on one thing and then see how that works, and it will lead you to a progression or a diversion, whatever. Just to remind people, it's about sparking curiosity. Aren't you curious to see what 30 seconds of laying in bed, 30 seconds each morning, how much time that could create for you during the day? Because it's freed your mind. It's started you off on a right step. It's, you've already accomplished something before you've even gotten out of bed. I always say making my bed is my first kind of accomplishment of the day. Well, not really. Preparing to make my bed would be an accomplishment. If just laying there for 30 seconds is like almost no time. It's really like we take that for granted. Like, but that 30 seconds can give you 2 hours of productivity more that day. It could give you 8 hours. Like, it really just kind of depends on where you are and what's blocking you. And everyone is individual, like you said. But I think even as an entry point, and even as an advanced entry point, like I've been on this journey for, since the early 90s. We're going on 30 years. And I still am curious, like, okay, I don't want a phone in my room, but let me see where I can, plug this in and like see if it chills me out. If it gives me 20 seconds of bliss and it frees my mind, then I'm like, yeah, that's worth it.
You know what I'd recommend to you too is there are some really great yoga nidra practices on the app that are longer form. The shortest one I think is 25 minutes.
Okay.
They're by a teacher named Hilary Jackendoff, and they can be done midday. Like, it would be nice to do it like around lunchtime or, shortly after lunchtime. Not too late, because then it'll interfere with your sleep, like before 3 p.m. Ideally, you don't fall asleep while you're doing yoga nidra.
Yeah, exactly.
Ideally. But they say that a half hour of yoga nidra is kind of getting the same kind of brain juice, I guess, as 4 hours of sleep.
Yeah, endorphin kicks. Yeah. I think that we don't get off on calming our mind the same way. The dopamine doesn't hit the same way. But what we don't realize, that is what's going on. It's a chemical reaction. Our body's really excited in a reverse sort of calming way to be still, because we are in constant motion. I mean, we like inertia, and if you're walking, your body wants to continue walking. But at some point, you cannot walk like 24/7. You have to lay down and rejuvenate, right? That's not how our body rejuvenates, is by walking around. We're not like a shark. We're just constant movement, right? And I'm big on movement, but only like, 16 hours of the day. 8 should be like as comatose as possible, like is still just letting the body fix itself from all the damage that you did all day long. But it's a good reminder. The longer ones you mentioned about midday, and it sparked something that I've just been experimenting with about getting into more of a calming state when I'm eating. Like, there's a lot being said the last few years about what goes on. Like, if you're watching television when you're eating,
right,
oftentimes you're eating too much, because the signals that are trying to tell your body that you are nearing full, they cannot compete with the endorphins that you're getting and the dopamine hits you're getting from watching, an interaction. It's really kind of all ties into, one, we have a pretty big obesity issue and metabolic challenges in North America.
Here in the USA, I think ours is even higher.
Yeah. I mean, Canada's not far, but it used to be significantly different. Like, I've been here 20 years and I used to be able to tell, like, when I went to the States, I was like, whoa, and now it's kind of, leaking up here, but it's all tied into that inability or just resistance of being still. Like, it's important to chew your food. It's important to be in a calm state, because you can actually give yourself indigestion or, acid reflux, or you can upset your microbiome just by thinking certain things while you're eating, by being angry when you're eating, by, being hasty.
We're living in a world of just constant distraction.
Yeah.
It's almost like the benefits of monotasking.
Yeah.
And eating should be something that you do as a
monotask
task.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty powerful. I mean, I've seen huge difference. I've never, ever had an issue with weight. I mean, if I stood up now, you'd be like, why are you talking about this?
Well, you said you move 16 hours a day.
I do. I'm pretty active. This is like the only time I sit down is for lunch.
I'm like, I got to move more.
And for the podcast once a week, right? I do move a lot, but I do find that out of equilibrium that way as well. Like, being overactive, it's really hard on your spleen from a traditional Chinese perspective. It's very difficult. And the spleen is tied in with the mind. So if you have an underdeveloped or an overtaxed spleen from a TCM perspective, you often have ruminating thoughts. Your mind is very busy, and it's almost impossible to meditate, because it's like 2 seconds in and you're like, I have other things to do. And you just can't sit still. A person can really go off the other end as well, of out of balance. It's not about moving all the time or being still all the time. It's about finding a balance of the two. Yep. And part of that, for this very busy and distracted world of whatever's distracting everyone, that's where this comes in. That's where Yoga Wake Up can be a good entry point, or a good just curiosity point for somebody who's further along in their journey.
Yeah. Definitely.
There's so many things that this ties into, but tell us as we get to wrapping up, like if someone were on the fence about like, oh, should I even try it? Like, what's the resistance? Give a 20-second plug as to if someone was showing resistance. Like, I mean, it's free.
I mean, I love what you said about it's free 7-day trial. Try it for free, risk-free. I'm going to give you a discount code to share with your listeners too. So we'll just sweeten the deal a little bit more. Why not? Right?
Yeah.
But I like what you said about curiosity. We're always looking for, I mean, at least I'm always looking for something that, new to improve my well-being, things that are easy. I like to think that this is not just easy, but it's also fun. We kind of demystify yoga. Like I said before, because there's so many different types of practices on the app, if one's not for you, maybe something else is. And if you're really active, it is difficult to quiet the mind, then that's where maybe the more movement-based practices are better for you. So yeah, I like what you said. Curiosity, why not?
Yeah.
And it's free to try.
Free 7-day trial, and definitely.
That's our goal. When we first started this, just to bring it full circle, it was to improve my morning routine. And we're all looking for something like that, just an easy addition to the mornings.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first read about your story, I was like, I bet she's scratching her own itch, because if you look at some of the most successful products, whether they be app or physical products like Spanx, these are often women who are like struggling, like, why can't I need this? And then they create it. And then guess what? It applies to like half the world.
We would have these moments because, entrepreneurship can be challenging. It has its ups and downs. And we would have these moments where we'd be really stressed out. It's if only there were an app to calm your mind when you're dealing with something really stressful, or to encourage you or motivate you when you were feeling like you couldn't do it, or if you're feeling imposter syndrome or you're feeling like a nervous wreck. So we would kind of laugh to ourselves because, oh yeah, that's why we created this.
There you go. Well, thanks so much, Lizzie, for joining us today. And again, if you want to check out anything about Yoga Wake Up, we'll have all that contact information in the show notes, but it's really easy. You can just I went right into the app store. You just type it in and boom, it pops right up. It's anywhere you get your app on iOS. Is it on Android as well, Lizzie?
It is on Android too.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
It's for all you Androidians out there. She's an equal opportunist there. So
yes.
Thanks again for joining us. It's been a blast, and definitely check out the discount code in the show notes. We'll get that listed down there for you, and give Yoga Wake Up a try. Thank you so much for listening today. If you feel any part of this episode resonated with you, then please consider sharing it with a friend who may also find value in it. And remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And before you go, did you know we have a fantastic free text community? If you want more bite-sized health hacks and reminders delivered directly to your phone, absolutely free, then text keyword YES to 206-483-2960. Again, that's keyword YES to 206-483-2960. And we'll see you on the inside.